Hi, I'm Reb Myron. I'm a minister through Pathways of Light, and I've been a Course in Miracles student for 40 years. I'm going through the text this year, reading a paragraph or two at a time, asking Jesus to clarify for me, and then I write from that clarity. And then that's what I'm sharing with you today. So we're on chapter 2, section 6, Fear and Conflict, paragraph 9. And this is our last paragraph for this section. It's a really powerful paragraph, by the way. Everyone experiences fear, yet it would take very little right thinking to realize why fear occurs. Few appreciate the real power of the mind, and no one remains fully aware of it all the time. However, if you hope to spare yourself from fear, there are some things you must realize and realize fully. The mind is very powerful and never loses its creative force. It never sleeps. Every instant it is creating. It is hard to recognize that thought and belief combine into a power surge that can literally move mountains. It appears at first glance that to believe such power about yourself is arrogant, but that's not the real reason you do not believe it. You prefer to believe that your thoughts cannot exert real influence because you're actually afraid of them. This may allow awareness of the guilt, but at the cost of perceiving the mind as impotent. If you believe that what you think is ineffectual, you may cease to be afraid of it, but you are hardly likely to respect it. There are no idle thoughts. All thinking produces form at some level. From the moment I read this the first time back in 1981, I was stunned. I had been attending a Unity church, and they emphasized the power of your thoughts. So it was not a new idea for me, but this paragraph is uncompromising. I had been learning that my thoughts matter, but I had never been willing to accept this level of effect. It was a long time before I truly embraced these words from Jesus. I can still slide into forgetfulness when I'm not thinking about it. Jesus says that our thoughts, when believed, can literally move mountains. Literally? Really? That is so hard to imagine. And yet, why would he say it if it were not true? He also says that there are no idle thoughts and that all thinking produces form at some level. When I first read these two sentences, I felt a surge of adrenaline all through my body. It was frankly frightening to think of all my thoughts having effects. Through Unity, I learned that my thoughts could influence my life, and that seemed big enough. But now I was learning that all my thoughts, even the idle ones I hardly noticed, were producing form. I didn't understand and still don't what Jesus means when he says form is produced at some level. But what I think he means is that my true thoughts produce on the level of the spiritual, and my ego thoughts produce on the level of the physical. This passage in the Course, more than any other, influenced me to begin watching my mind and allowing my thoughts to be corrected. If my thoughts are powerful, and Jesus says they are, then I need to be more mindful of where I let my mind wander. I need to be very mindful. I also understand what he means when he says that we are afraid of our thoughts. Why am I afraid of my thoughts? Well, the world is a reflection of my thoughts, and I don't want to be responsible for this. I don't want to think I'm continuing to be responsible. The ego counsels that it's better to stop believing that I have such power. Also, some of those thoughts in my mind could trigger guilt. I certainly don't want to think about some form of them producing, some of them producing some form of level. So, sorry, I'm not saying that correctly. Let me do that again. I certainly don't want to think about some of them producing form at any level, since I have no choice about that, because it is simply true that my thoughts are very powerful. I want to allow the Holy Spirit to heal my mind. I want my thoughts to be as close to truth as possible. Two very important things I have learned through the practice of mind watching are these. First, if I insist on being mindful of my thoughts and the ego, it's going to say I'm guilty for them. If I fall for that, I will feel really bad about myself, which is not bringing me closer to God. Guilt is not love. At the very least, feeling guilty when I notice a mistaken thought will discourage me from looking. When I first started mind watching, it was very hard. Obviously, when I think about it, there's nothing hard about noticing thoughts that are not love and then asking the Holy Spirit to correct my thinking. What could be simpler? And yet it felt hard. It was hard because I judged myself and felt guilty for my thoughts. The guilt made me afraid of my own thoughts. That's why I had so many unacknowledged thoughts. That I thought of it as idle chatter that didn't matter, which felt better than the guilt. But I was wrong about that. When I stopped judging myself for my thoughts, the process of mind watching did actually become easy. I seldom feel guilty for thoughts now. And when I do, I notice what has happened and I give that to the Holy Spirit as well. I realize now that the thoughts are not personal. They're shared by all of us. No one has original thoughts. We don't make the thoughts up. They just seem to be floating around and suddenly we notice one and become interested in it. Then we think, that's my thought. The fact is, the person next to us could be looking at the very same thought and thinking it is theirs. Now, instead of feeling guilty because I've noticed a mistaken thought in my mind, I feel happy to have found it and to have this chance to let it be healed. I do this not just for myself, but for all of us. Without guilt, it's simple and painless. The other thing that makes it feel hard is a mistaken belief that it is my job to stop thinking untrue thoughts. This is a very painful error because I cannot stop thinking about anything. The harder I try, the more I think about it. I've tried replacing one thought with a different, truer thought, which didn't work for me either. It didn't work because it's not my job to heal my mind. It's only my job to desire healing. Once I've forgiven the thought and let it go to the Holy Spirit for healing, I can then reinforce that healing by choosing to remember the true thoughts. I notice the thought that is not love, and then I ask the Holy Spirit to correct my thinking and heal my mind. That's my part. When I try to do more, I just suffer because I'm trying to do something I can't do. Since I've learned these two things, that I'm innocent regardless of the thoughts I find in my mind, and it's not my job to heal the mind, but only to desire the healing, the whole mind watching practice is so much easier. Jesus says even our idle thinking produces form. So that with all the years of practice, you might wonder if I've noticed a difference in my life. In other words, have I noticed the effect of a more healed mind in my life? Yes, absolutely. I am so much more peaceful and happier than I used to be. I'm never depressed anymore. This coming from someone who spent most of her life depressed. My life is just easier. Another thing I've noticed is that when I do entertain ego thoughts, I experience the effect of those thoughts much more quickly. And conversely, when I notice something in my life that is not a reflection of love, I immediately realize I must be holding on to and believing untrue thoughts. I then ask the Holy Spirit to help me see differently. It's all very quick now, almost automatic. Seldom do I have trouble letting go of thoughts anymore. A really nice consequence of all this mind watching is that letting go of the ego thoughts has resulted in a much quieter mind. I don't experience a silent or empty mind yet, but it is much quieter, and this is very pleasant. And now, when the ego mind starts to chatter, I quickly notice. It seems crazy that for all of my life, I hardly noticed the chatter and just tolerated it. I don't have to do that anymore, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm also grateful for you for joining me in this reading, and I hope that you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you did, please like it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I likely will not be posting anything tomorrow. Maybe, but maybe not, because it's Easter and I'm doing things with my family. But if I don't show up tomorrow, I'll be here Monday. See you one of these days, Sunday or Monday.